Welcome back to Galaxy Tenants. On today's episode, we head to Montana for a conversation with brewer Brian Kuszynski, and we feature a couple of songs from the Garrett Sayers Trio.
Brian Kuszynski, how are you?
Good. How are you, J-Man?
I'm doing really good, man. So you are a lead brewer. Can you tell me about how you got into brewing beer?
Man, I think it started when my brother-in-law just bought me like the super cheap Mr. Beer homebrew kit, the one you'd see probably at the drugstore on the end cap, aisle end cap, that's got the 10-gallon like brown plastic jug you ferment in. I remember brewing into 16-ounce jamming jars because I didn't have bottles, and like we would just sit around, and they're actually, some of them were quarts too. So you'd open up like a big quart of beer and you'd have to drink it down. But yeah,
so
that's how it started.
Those beer kits can't be good, right? Those like, and I'm as an elite brewer, I'm sure you're gonna.
Yeah, you could make good beer with them if you were like. I didn't make good beer with them. I'm sure you could if you were like super clean and sanitary and did a great job. But yeah, no, the beer I made was horrible. I know that it was really bad.
I remember sitting in Ann Arbor, Michigan at your house that you were renting at the time, drinking some just awful beer.
Oh, my homebrew was horrible. No doubt about it. I like, when I started professionally brewing, I think within the first week or two, I was like, my beer is horrible. It's horrible.
So tell me about the process of brewing beer. Is it? I hear a lot of folks say like there's only a few ingredients and anything else isn't beer and blah blah blah. But what's your perspective on that? What's the process? Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, there's four main ingredients to making beer, right? You need malt, you need grain, you need water, you need yeast, and you need hops. Basically, you can make beer with four ingredients, like really great beer with four ingredients. But you could also use a bunch of other stuff too. That's a hard question to attack because there's a lot of different ways you could go about it. I could briefly explain the brewing process. Like basically you're milling malted barley. You malt barley to get the grain to kind of release its sugar. Seeds have a bunch of sugar in them to create a plant. But when you malt barley, you're starting that process, but then they raise the temperature to stop it from becoming an actual plant. But you want to get the sugars starting to be released. Then you mill the grain. That kind of breaks the cell walls and gets that sugar, available to be mixed in with water. And that kind of gets a lot of enzymes that are present in grain to start doing a starch conversion, basically. I could get really detailed about it, but I also could not. So I'll try to keep it brief.
You don't have to be brief if you don't want to. If it's an in-depth process you want to talk about, let's do it. If not, then you can kind of.
I'll be honest. There's a lot of people who are a lot more knowledgeable at this. So it's funny. Like, something I love about the craft beering industry is there are a lot of guys that have brewing degrees. They make really awesome beer, and there's a lot of guys that don't have like any degrees, but they have awesome experience or they have really great mentors, and they make really great beer too. Some people are a lot more. Can be a lot more technical than I am. I'm not going to lie about it. What I love about making beer is just kind of like imagining something that you want to drink, and then like coming up with a process to get to that point. A lot of people do say, there's four ingredients in beer. When I was working at Brewery Vivant, making barrel-aged beers, we were really, trying to age beer in different barrels, and we were adding a lot of different kind of spices and fruits and just different ingredients. So that in that way, we were really almost like being cocktail, like a bartender, almost like making beers. Like we'd sit around and be like, let's make this gin barrel aged beer that's almost going to have almost like a cocktail quality to it and is much more than a beer. So, there's great ways that you can start with your four ingredients and make a lager or an ale or a stout or an IPA or something. And that's amazing. That's great, you know. But then you could also like dive off the deep end and do your, you know, like blend a beer aged in like 5 different spirit barrels and add a bunch of local spice and ingredients and make it completely different, you know, and give it to someone and be like, wow, this is beer, you know, and use it as that. Like, just in thinking about beverage, I love beverage. My wife loves wine. She makes cocktails for us a lot. Like, we drink wine, we drink liquor, and I love craft beer, and I love the spirit of it in America, pushing all boundaries. It's also like opened up our world to like all these other beverages, you know, and even like these hard seltzers, you know, there's a time and a place for that when it's 100 degrees out and you just need something to get the sweat off your brow. Like, you know, you'll see me with a White Claw a couple times a year, definitely. And yeah, shandies too. Like, why not? It's a whole world of beverages. It's what's exciting about it. It opens up everything, you know?
Sure.
So,
I think you start small and then your palate kind of expands. And then from there you find that, well, there's all these great things in all these different categories. And, you know, a lot of people limit themselves to 1 or 2 things, but there's a whole world of beverage, as you say, out there. And yeah, I'll have a White Claw.
It's an interesting world. It was hard, like being in the craft industry now for almost 10 years. The Brewers Association, there's some guys that really like push the perspective that they want the craft breweries to kind of think of, they're a part of a larger alcohol beverage industry, you know, and like your beer's on a shelf, if you distribute competing with wine and liquor and other beers and other alcoholic drinks. And sometimes I've seen guys, you get this attitude where you don't want to chase trends and you don't want to do like the thing that's like popular, you know, like in West Michigan, you know, a lot of guys I knew were really stubborn about doing the hazy IPAs, you know, but like one brewery in particular I can think of started making one and it saved their brewery, kept their brewery open and it kept the lights on and it's their number 1 beer. So how can you argue with that? Like, if something's popular, why not throw your hat in the ring and show everyone that you can do it just as good as anyone else, you know?
And doesn't it make sense to, if something is popular, to use that to generate income so that you can do all these off-the-wall things that you want to do?
For sure. Yeah. And there's a line sometimes. I think immediately what comes to mind is glitter beer. And, you know, and I've seen like, that's not a beer like that. Glitter doesn't, are you familiar with it?
No.
Like, guys are putting like, this was something that was happening like in West Michigan, like a few years back where, you can buy, you know, edible, non-toxic glitter. It's super fine. It's not like what you're thinking at like a string cheese lot. Like, it's much finer than that. It's very, very fine glitter. Guys were putting it in beer and gives the beer like a really sparkly kind of look. It does not enhance the flavor of the mouth. It does nothing for if you think like, if you're going to like judge a beer on the 5 categories, which are style, flavor, mouthfeel, appearance, and like your overall perception, which I should check and make sure that's actually what that is before. But like there's yeah, glitter doesn't do much for those. But like it was a fad that was going around where guys were doing glitter, like they're putting glitter in their stouts or glitter in their milkshake stouts. Yes.
As a brewer and as a cynical person, you've got to look at that and be like, what the fuck, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, again, it was like this attitude change. We almost, I don't know if it was like we forced it on ourselves where it was like, because you kind of like turn your nose at some of these newer things and you're like, what? Like, I'm not going to put glitter in my beer, you know? And then like your marketing or salesperson comes down to the brewery like, well, like, hey, let's try to like have this on our social media. Like, hey, we're pouring like a glitter stout just tonight, just to like maybe generate like more foot traffic in your pub on like maybe a Tuesday or a Wednesday night, you know, just, and like, I get that. Like, it was something we were like, no, we're not going to do that for a long time. But then at some point it's like, you're sitting up there and maybe you've had like a super long day and you've been like canning for 10 hours and things haven't gone right. And you're like so tired. So like your 2 pints after work kind of hit you a little bit harder than they usually do. And all of a sudden, like this glitter beer idea sounds great. Like, yeah, you know what? We'll do that. we'll take an IPA. You want a glitter beer? We're going to take a half barrel of our IPA. We're going to add strawberries. We're going to put basil in it. And then we'll put glitter in it. And you can come get your hoppy strawberry basil glitter beer. How about that? You know, and like, and so then and then you order the glitter, and now you have it in house, and you didn't use all of it. So now you're like scratching your head, like, man, what else should we do with this glitter? Because it's sitting on your desk is the problem. You know, it's like right there. You're like, yeah, let's do a stout. You know, and then like a month or two goes by, and you tell the salesperson, hey, we've got another glitter beer for you. And they're like, no more. It's over. We're done. We can't sell any more glitter beer. Stop fucking making glitter beer. So that's just how that happened in my brewery a few years ago.
I love that. That's pretty great. What are your favorite beers to make, like style of beer, and what's your favorite style to consume?
Well, style to consume, I've heard like your favorite beer is the one in my hand, but I love IPAs. It made this whole thing, like I had heard that Bell's was going to start distributing in Montana in 2020. Montana is one of the few states you can't buy Two Hearted, and I miss it a lot.
I've got some in my fridge right now. Maybe I should.
I know. I remember actually the last time I drank some, it was out of your fridge. So yeah, I miss that beer dearly. But like, yeah, I love IPAs. I love hoppy beers. I think the IPL style, or India Pale Lager, I think is a really cool idea. Just kind of stripping not all the malt away. I do think they're, good IPAs have to have a good balance. That's why Two Hearted is great. It's super hoppy. It's got a great malt backbone to it. Personally, like, I didn't care for the Brut IPAs, which were like just so hop forward. They just didn't have like any malt to balance that out for me personally. But, like, I'm kind of like, I drink a little bit of everything. I'm really annoyed with how much Mexican lager costs in West Montana. Like a 12-pack of Modelo is like $14. Are you kidding me? Like, that's insane to me. Like, it should be like 8 or 7, right? I don't know how many, maybe 9? 14 seems like a lot. I don't know.
It is. Maybe they just don't distribute a bunch of that.
Canadian lager here, unfortunately, which is weird because you're super. I mean, I'm like 6 hours from Canada, but
wow. So there's no like Molson or Labatt's up there? Or?
I haven't seen any.
Wow, that's crazy.
But it's also like the town we live in is so small. It's kind of, I can't buy beer here because there's no telling like how long it's been on the shelf. Like, just, I bought a 6-pack of a larger brewery's beer of an IPA, and it was like 6 months old.
Ooh.
And it was, it just tasted like barley wine. It was like, there's no hop character at all. The first part of your question was like beers that I like to make. The first brewery I worked at, Brewery Vivant, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, they're Belgian yeast. So I got to know like a handful of Belgian yeast strains like really, really well. And so the brewery I work for now, Madison River in Belgrade, Montana, they deal with a lot of American yeast. We do 1056, which is a super common West Coast yeast that everyone uses. It's just a great attenuator, low yeast profile, low fermentation profile. But we also like get to play around and make lagers, which isn't something that I did at my last job very much. So, and our boss he was kind of like pushing back on the whole, like, he didn't kind of like the idea of doing hoppy stuff at first, but now they kind of seem like they're letting us to do a lot more hop forward stuff, like session IPAs. We have like a Imperial IPL that's aging right now, stuff like that. So
sure.
The beer market out here is a little different than what I'm used to. So
right. With the coming of coronavirus, I've seen statistics as high as a third of American breweries, craft breweries, may end up closing. How has it impacted the work you do, and where do you see the industry going? And is it possible to recover through this for a lot of these places?
Oh man, just to say again, I'll tread on this subject lightly. It's almost been 12 months to the week that we've been out here. I've only been submerged in Montana brewing culture for that year. And I really try to like humble myself because I'm still getting to know it. It is very different than like the big market, West Michigan. And personally, being like a Michigan trained brewer, I feel like that state's brewing scene is just as cool as Colorado, California, North Carolina. I think sometimes it gets left out of the conversation, but there's a lot of cool things happening there. Obviously, you have Founders and Bell's and Jolly Pumpkin out of Dexter. Montana it's a little behind, where just like some of the hoppier trends are still coming about. Like hoppy beers do very well out here. They kind of are like the hazy IPA thing is just kind of like everyone has one on tap. Like no one's stubborn about like ignoring it. Like everyone knows they need one. Session IPAs are kind of becoming popular right now, which is obviously like if you look at like, all day IPA from Founders has been around in West Michigan for years now. So that kind of idea is just, it's a little lagging behind. And then at the same time, it's just a really interesting market. There's not a lot of barrel-aged beers. Every brewery in Montana makes a Scotch ale. Got to have a Scotch ale to be relevant, which is odd to say for the very least. So, and it's funny. I love our Scotch ale that we make at Madison River. It's really tasty. And I know that they've gotten a couple really, really good accolades and awards for it. So yeah, it's an interesting brewery place. I've been furloughed for 5 weeks now. I've been keeping in touch with my staff, but like as far as like how we're doing like as an industry, I'm not terribly certain, to be honest. I've really taken this time to just be like family time. We also like moved into our house like right in the middle of January, so it was a good opportunity to get a lot of projects done. And
sure,
I do know there are some smaller guys that are probably going to end up closing. The brewery I work for is like it's a larger brewery. It's quite a bit larger than the rest of the breweries, and it has a really large distribution footprint. And I mean, we ship our beer to like 4 or 5 different states, and I think Madison River should be okay. I think I've seen a lot of numbers too. I saw a report that was saying like initially like craft beer sales went down 77%. We as a business, I think we saw a lot of people load up. Like when Montana loaded up on toilet paper, people also grabbed a ton of beer. And so we had a ton of distribution sales that went out. Obviously, restaurants and pubs are closed, so our draft sales going out the door aren't that much, are zero.
Mm-hmm.
Our pub's closed, so tap room sales are zero, just like everyone else. So when that stuff starts opening up, and we are going to be opening up here next week, I think maybe on May 10th or 11th in a week and a half, pubs are going to start being able to have people. But I think it's going to be like no drinking at the bar, like the bar counter will be off limits, and then tables have to be like spaced so far away, and yeah.
Yikes. Oh my god.
Yeah, I start work on Monday, so see how that goes.
Be safe. Are you going to be wearing a mask and all that? And
yeah, I do think I will be.
You have
definitely.
to, dude.
Because we work like if we're packaging, it's like, I mean, it's close quarters to the
even
position.
if you're interacting in the brew, I mean, just if you're within any distance of people at all, you gotta have a mask on. It's so sketch.
I love breweries too because I love stainless steel, just like COVID-19.
Oh God.
So no, I do. I love breweries. I love stainless steel. But yeah, no, I walk in there and I'm like, oh, good God.
Yeah, just be careful.
I was gonna say, well, that's the interesting thing too. Is like since I haven't been back at work, like I'm assuming, I'll say about Montana, for better or for worse, stuff costs a lot to ship out here, and it's a really common business practice to get like a lot of places get some of their stuff just from Costco. And so like we've always sourced our gloves because you don't want to touch like brewery parts with your hands. We've always sourced that stuff from Costco. And I have no idea. I'm assuming that Costco's out of gloves. So I'm assuming that the brewery doesn't have gloves. And I'm assuming that there's a lot of breweries that don't have access to gloves. And that doesn't mean that you can't do your job. Like the first place I worked for the first 2 years we were open, we did not wear plastic gloves. And we didn't have any infected beer. We didn't dump a single batch down the drain in the first 2 years. Ironically, we had our first bad batch after we started using gloves on a regular basis. So, you know, like you can keep a brewery clean, but like they say best practices, if you're not doing everything you can, then you're not doing it enough. So like, where does this fall in the overall like conversation about COVID-19? Because I'm passionate about making clean beer, and I want to make clean beer for people. If people want to drink, if they want to spend their money on my beer, I'm not going to stop them. But should like I have gloves to make clean beer when there's nurses and doctors who don't have clean gloves? You know, and like I would much rather have someone have PPE to save someone's life than me to have it to clean beer. You know, so I don't expect there to be gloves when I go back on Monday.
And if there's not, there's other things you can do with disinfectants and you know, stuff you can Purell, all that kind of stuff. So there are other options. You'll just have to get creative, obviously. I don't know that you're going to find gloves just yet. It feels like they haven't restocked on that stuff. But I would check in with your brewery just to make sure what kind of safety practices are being put in place to protect you before you step back into that building. And that's across the board for anybody, not just obviously your brewery that you work at, but for anybody. If you're going to return to the workplace in this setting, I think it's important to touch base with the employer and have an understanding of what those safety measures are going to look like to protect your life.
No, for sure. Absolutely. I totally agree.
So I wanted to ask you, what are your top three, or what do you feel are the top three beer states in this country?
Why do you gotta ask that, man?
Because I want to hear you say Michigan,
North Dakota, Utah, and Rhode Island. I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, what the fuck? Do you have?
I mean, yeah. I guess I will answer this in a way like, if I could like take a vacation and go visit breweries, like where would I go? California, Colorado, Michigan.
Great.
Not in that order.
Mm-hmm.
But those three. I think a lot of my favorite breweries are in those places. You know, North Carolina obviously has a lot of cool things going on in Asheville. I don't know if I could just visit one state anywhere like on the Northeast coast. I would just have to like go everywhere. Sure. There's just so much good stuff up there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think California's got so many. I keep thinking about like the physical terrain too, you know, like Northern California is just beautiful to drive through. So like, who wouldn't want to just drive through Northern California and go to a bunch of awesome breweries, you know?
It's a beautiful setting for sure, especially to be taking any sort of intoxicants in my opinion.
For sure. And then like likewise, like there's things about like that I just love about Denver, that you can just walk and go do all these things and drink all these cool beverages.
In Denver, there's an area called Rhino, which is River North, and they have opened up a ton of breweries down there, and it's a bunch of scooters and people wandering around going brewery to brewery. So next time you come out, man, I'd love to go down there with you. There's some really great breweries. I mean, I don't know what good beer is relative to what you know good beer is, but I've enjoyed what I've had down there, and there's some really cool settings.
Honestly, it's funny is like I just realized like if I was like in any place of culture, I would really be like driven by food choices, because we have no falafel and we have the worst Mexican possible you can imagine. And I don't know how you can mess up classic American Tex-Mex. I don't know how you fuck that up, you know, but it happens on a regular basis.
Up in Montana.
And there's the Thai food is just not that good.
It's not a very cultured place, I feel like. That's a pretty white place.
Man.
What's your favorite part about Montana so far since you've lived there? What'd you say, about a year?
Yeah. What do I like about it?
It's beautiful.
It's really beautiful. And it's funny, like you see that I've seen it a couple of times. You come out here and you kind of get like awestruck, and like people figure out like, how can I like work less? You know, like, and I'm like, especially like this being at home with my son, who's about to turn 5. And we also like recently got a puppy who's like 6 months old. So like the three of us have been spending a lot of time like in the woods and the mountains. I love looking for rocks, and like, so like Emerson loves looking for rocks, and there's a ton of like forest land we can just go drive up into safely, social distance from everything, and dog can run around and we can find crystals. So that's awesome.
What do you have up there? You have like a lot of quartz and stuff, or what?
So we live next, like they call Montana's state slogans is the treasure state. And we live close. We live like 20 minutes from Butte. And in Butte, they had like, it's I can't remember what they call it. It's like the most gold they've ever pulled out of the ground is in Butte.
Wow.
And so like super mineral rich, everything, amethyst, smoky quartz, gold, silver, sapphires, and like everything in between. So I live really close to this, and I hope I don't fuck this up. I'm going to give this a go because I'm just an amateur geologist because I like to look at stones. That's the funny thing is I like my whole life living up in Michigan, right? You walk the beaches and you have these beautiful beach landscapes. And I probably spent 95% of that time staring at the ground because I love stones, right? And the same thing happens out here. You get these gorgeous mountainscape views, and I'm like looking at the ground all the time. You know, like that's how you find fossils and quartz. That's what you don't. If you don't look, you're not going to find it. So, and the beautiful views are still there, so it's okay. I live next to this area. It's called the Boulder Batholith, and a batholith is like it's a huge area of exposed igneous rock, and that's like where you find precious minerals and stuff. And so like the batholith that I live by is a relatively small batholith. It's only like about 75 square miles, but a ton of it is protected national forest. Right now, our biggest frustration is we don't have like a truck with really high clearance to get it like deep in the mountains. I can get like a mile or two in, and I know the really good shit's like a couple miles further, you know. And the interesting thing about where we do live is like it is when you live like people enjoy the outdoors in a lot of different ways. And for me, like I've always been like a camper and a hiker and stuff like that. And Montana is super like ATV heavy, and so I was complaining to my neighbor like, oh, I wanted to get up there, and he was like, you need to go get a motorcycle or a 4-wheeler, like, you know, that's how you do it. So in the market for a motorcycle, right? So,
motorcycles are fun. ATVs are awesome. I love ATVs because you can kind of sit there. You don't have to balance yourself necessarily when you're just chilling or whatever. But ATVs, 4-wheelers are so fun. And I too share a love of rocks and crystals and all things shiny.
Yeah, I actually found the obsidian you gave me.
Oh, nice.
Like per day. It was like way down in my backpack.
I still have a piece of Joe Louis Arena for you.
Yes.
A painted piece, and then I also I'll probably send that up, and I'll send up a case of Two Hearted for you too, if I'm able.
Oh man, that'd be great. I'll have to find some more crystals for you.
I would.
We've
love
only
that.
found a couple pointers, and they're really small. So.
Right on.
beer, you take grain, and once it's milled, you mix it with water. When the grain gets mixed with water, there's enzymes already in the grain that get activated, and they convert the long chain starch sugar into shorter sugar chains that will then allow yeast to ferment that sugar into alcohol and CO2. So basically, you take water and grain, make starch, let the enzymes create the starch into sugar, and then you boil that wort, which is unfermented beer, to kill off anything else that might be going on there. And then that's when you add your hops. I won't get too detailed into hops. Basically, hops, they make beer bitter, and they add flavor and aroma. The longer you boil a hop, the more bitterness you get from it. The longer you boil it, you also drive off more flavor. So
there's quite a variety of hop too, isn't there, in this country?
Yeah, hops are crazy. Like the hops are endless. And that was something I really missed about my old job, was that our pub manager really wanted us to be using all the cutting edge hops. So we always had like a bag of like the freshest, coolest hop, right? And the place where I work now, it's like just hard to get that stuff, and shipping costs more, and we haven't been a hop forward brewery, so it's just more difficult to get those things. So I'm using hops that I've already used before, but are still considered like pretty cool for Montana.
Sure.
Which is awesome. So
yeah, that's great, man. Cool. So I did want to open a quick Two-Hearted here and get this on mic here. 1 second. I want to cheers you.
Thanks.
Cheers, my friend.
Cheers. I'm gonna go get a beer. I was thinking about drinking beer. Give me 10 seconds.
Take your time. Take your time. Go get a good one. I'm drinking a Two-Hearted right now. This is absolutely delicious, and it's a Bell's Brew out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Comstock, I think, is where it's actually brewed, but a delicious beer. Let's see what Brian comes back with. All right, what are you drinking?
This is a Madison River Black Ghost Oatmeal Stout.
Oh, cool label.
I actually really love this beer. I say that like it sounds like I don't like the beer, Madison River, which is not true. I love our beer.
So take a
but
sip
I really
of that.
love this stout. What's that?
Take a sip of that stout and let me know what you're picking up on and what it tastes like to you.
It just tastes like a good old-fashioned oatmeal stout. Tastes like oatmeal. Tastes like a stout. Perfect. I'm curious what that stuff is, because I was really kind of like encouraging that kind of behavior before I was furloughed.
What kind of behavior?
Just social distancing. I had suggested that we split shifts to try to like have less staff there. The attitude about this whole thing in Montana has been really weird.
Did you guys have a stay-at-home order?
We did have a stay-at-home order. And honestly, so our governor is a Democratic governor. The state is really Republican. They say people don't vote for the party; they vote for the person. They vote for the man.
What a novel idea,
right? But it's Montana. It's very out west. Like, you know, the whole state's open carry. People do not like having their liberties infringed upon. You know.
Look what's happening in Michigan, man.
Dude, and you know what? Like, and I applaud Governor Whitmer for what she's doing for like, and Bullock. So my Governor Bullock has done, I think he was really aggressive. I mean, I think Montana had like 10 or 12 cases when he was like stay at home. And a lot of people gave him a lot of, you know, criticism for that because such few cases. And now like I know our state has met the White House's criteria for opening back up, because we have had like the numbers go down for a while now because of the stay-at-home order, and we'll see what happens. My wife and I are like just trying to stay as positive as possible and hope that, and it sucks. Like I just hope things work out for the best.
I think it's going to be okay. I mean, I think that with the technologies we have, there'll eventually be a vaccine. We'll go back to almost normal. Hopefully we don't have to touch each other as much as we used to. Like shaking hands and all that shit is absolutely disgusting. I don't mind a hug, but I don't know where your hands have been and all that. And we can probably leave that behind us, I feel like, as we move forward.
For sure.
You know, we'll lose
I think
a lot.
some things are definitely going to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it'll go back to some level of normalcy at some point, though, man. And I wanted to go back to Michigan and just say, I think that the ironic part about Michigan is that not only is Whitmer doing a good job with taking this extremely seriously, but she's protecting the very people that are standing there with an AR-15 in the lobby of the fucking Capitol building. She's even protecting their safety unbeknownst to them, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
It's
that
wild.
stuff's just nuts, man. Everyone's situation is a little different. I'm not going to pretend to know everyone's, life story. But like that stuff it is a little weird.
Health and safety first is my thing.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
No,
we can make more money, but we can't if you can't live or if you're sick. It's just it's a serious thing.
I know Montana is definitely making me a little. Personally, I can tell. I can feel it's making me more numb to the gun right thing, because it's just like I see people with guns all the time, and it's to the point now. It's almost like it stops being a thing. Like where I take this one area, I go rock hunting with Emerson. I've seen this guy. He definitely has property there, and I'll see him walking the road with his shotgun. I've seen him like 3 or 4 times now, and it's totally normal. Is it hunting season? Absolutely not. Like, is this guy out there hunting something? Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I think they can hunt quails year round, so he's out there getting something. But like it's just like a way of life. But like AR-15s in the Capitol building, that's like that's a little extreme.
That's white privilege at its best right there, because if any other race walked in there with a gun into the Capitol building, and I'm pretty sure that wouldn't play out the same way, and it wouldn't be looked at as like a protest or their right to assemble, blah, 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 it's a direct reflection of white privilege. And with Michigan having one of the largest militias in the country, it doesn't surprise me that would be the state where all of those guys who didn't qualify for the police force and were too scared to join the Army or Navy can go play pretend in the Capitol building. Super fun.
Right, for sure. No. Yeah, it seems like there's a correlation to like tactical gear and like obesity. Like I don't know, like maybe you've got like you're used to carrying that much weight around. So like I know that's highly offensive and I probably shouldn't have said it. But like honestly,
I'm fat, I'm okay with it.
No, it's just odd, and
weird fucking times.
It's hard. I like it's frustrating because there's been such a mixed message about what we should do for this. And like I hate to be, like dive into the political aspect of this, but it exists, so you can't ignore it. But I mean, to say the Michigan things, you have like Whitmer extending the stay. And I do believe, if I read correctly, that Trump said that he was going to give the governors of each state the decision to open up their economies when they want to. And then did he not tweet earlier today, like, come on and open up? So it feels like, it sucks. And it's hard, like, because how do you handle this situation now where you have someone at the top saying, we're going to give the governors the power to make this decision, and then kind of rile up people that also support him that don't support the governor's decision is like, it's just mind-boggling.
It's a disaster. I mean, I think that when you have somebody with dementia running the country, and I'm not a healthcare professional, but at least the symptoms of dementia are present in Trump, and he's constantly contradicting himself. The Department of Justice, I believe, even said that they were going to join a lawsuit against the states who did have what they considered too strict of regulations, while at the same time allowing those states to come up with their own regulations. So it's a way of not taking any sort of responsibility, not having to output any energy to oversee everything, and pander to both the liberal aspect of the country by pretending they had something to do with the stimulus checks that are our tax money, and the other side of that where they're telling everybody to open up. And it's like the Twilight Zone almost. It has that vibe. Sure. It makes no sense.
Well, it's interesting. Like I've often lately wondered what it must be like to be like maybe a foreigner in like another Western country, like maybe a European who's looking at the situation in America and maybe being like, wow, there's Americans that like want to risk their lives to like line the pockets of the wealthy. But isn't that like what capitalism has always been? That, like it's always kind of been that anyway. So are we really that surprised that we're being asked, or like that the meat companies are lobbying to force people to go back to work? You know, like, are we that surprised? You
This
know?
is this is pretty characteristic of late stage capitalism, when the system is starting to collapse under the pressure of the need to produce and earn, while risking the health and safety of the people who are the cogs in the wheel.
For
So,
sure.
we're at the very end of this thing. We're not participating in a system that, while risking people's health and safety to make minimum wage, it's not a sustainable thing. This cannot continue.
No, for sure. The whole food chain thing is a curious thing to me because, and who knows, like, I don't know how, like, I don't know where food comes for us, like, at every level. You know, like, you read things like the pork plant that closed in Dakota. You know, it sounds like a big deal, but it produces 5% of the pork. But, like, how much is that? And, like, how much has already, like, been processed? And, like, I guess, like, big picture, because, like, I do think that we should be making decisions to save human lives, but where is that line where, like, right now, and I'm just throwing this out there as devil's advocate because it's a shitty thing to say, like, there's an over under of lives to be risked to prevent, like, everyone from starving in, like, 9 to 12 months maybe, you know, but, like, who knows what that is? And I'm not saying that that's a possibility or not, but, like, it could be. So, like, if in 6 months, if we're all standing in bread lines fighting over rice and beans, looking at, like, 150 million people starving, then, like, you start looking like, is 2 or 3 million people dying, you know, from COVID-19 worse or better?
The fact
How
that
do
you
you
have to
weigh
have
those things out, you know, like, and the frustration comes is that we're having that conversation, that this has been ignored for so long, that, like, how do you figure this out? Like, my wife sells food for a living and she has to go back on the road and she wants a mask. So, like, should her job provide a mask? Should her job provide a mask for her to sell food when they need masks in a hospital? So, like, why haven't we been thinking about this? You want us to open up, but we need, like, 300 million masks a day to open up. How do you, like, we don't even have masks for people getting sick. We haven't planned to open up, yet alone plan to deal with people getting sick. You know, like, how do people have the PPE to even go back to normal life if we don't have it for hospitals?
So
it's just crazy. I don't know.
No, but that's a good point. It speaks to the situation we're in, and the pressure that it puts on the workers in a capitalist society, in that you don't want to starve. You need to earn. You're going to risk your health and safety, I guess, to go work in a place where your health and safety is not paramount and not in the interest of the company or even your government. Right. That's such a dangerous position that we've put ourselves in. And if something doesn't change drastically very soon, this is not tenable. We cannot wake up every morning and be like, hey, I want to go earn $10 an hour. And, you know, some people more, some people less, and risk your life to do so. That's not an acceptable thing to ask of the American worker.
And it's weird, too, because I've had a lot of great employers, you know, and I really like the guys I work for now. But, like, who wants to work for someone that doesn't have, like, their well-being as, like, a priority, you know? And
hopefully your company does. Yeah. Hopefully they've taken the proper steps, and they're very engaged in what it will take to keep the people safe. Because, you know, I'm not speaking from a place where I have a company that is at risk of losing a bunch of money and our employees, but I think that at my core, I'm not sure I would be willing to risk one life of one employee who's worked hard for me to continue to earn a couple bucks or whatever. I just,
sure,
that doesn't make sense to me.
No, yeah, for sure. My employer, they gave us all a choice. They were like, if you feel like you need to shelter in place, because breweries are essential. They were considered essential in Montana. So when the stay in order place went in, you know, like, we kept going to work. My wife is high risk, got a couple high risk factors. So yeah, I asked my boss if it'd be okay. They said absolutely. You know, and it's kind of, I think it kind of worked out well for the time being because we slowed way down.
by opening back up, don't we open ourselves up to the possibility of erasing all of that progress and spiking even higher?
Absolutely, absolutely. I guess, Justin, it sucks to ignorance is bliss, all right? And you can tell I have I've tried to inform myself about this as much as possible. And there was a time when I like completely just stopped reading the news for 3 days, and it was the fucking best 3 days of quarantine probably. And it felt weird. I just had to stop for a second, But like also like we have a kid and like we need to know what's going on. So like we started reading the news again eventually. And I hate to think that I'm sticking my head in the sand by going back to work, but there is a big part of me that wants to believe that cases have like really gone down in Montana. The hot spot that was originally the hot spot when we started having cases, the Gallatin County, which is actually where I work, hasn't had like any new cases for like 3 weeks or something like that.
That's great.
And I do, like, it's so everything is so hypocritical about this whole situation. I know it's mixed messaging. I want to believe at face value that we're going towards a good place in Montana. They still have like a mandatory 14-day quarantine if you come here from out of state, and like I don't know what they're doing to make sure that that's happening. I know at the airport when you get off the plane they take your temperature. But like I've also read a lot of stuff that having a fever isn't necessarily a symptom that everyone that has this has, or like that you're totally fine and then 3 days later you're on a ventilator. So
let's remember also that there's such a high percentage of asymptomatic carriers. Sure. So like all these temperature checks, like what is the percentage of people that actually have a fever? Like 10, 15% or something. So temperature checks, what is that going to do when you have hundreds of people coming through your airports or thousands or tens of thousands and they're just asymptomatic? Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense that temperature checks are some sort of a barrier for this, but it's what they're rolling out. What I would just say to you, man, is just protect yourself because your government's not going to protect you, and you hope your employer will, but you're the one who's going to have to really determine what's going to be safe and best for you.
For sure. And I love making beer, but nothing compares to like staying at home with your family and spending time in the mountains. Like it.
Maybe there's a way of doing both. Maybe there's something you can do to keep your foot in the door and still continue to, do what you love, but you can do it from the safety and the comfort of your home at some point, and, something to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
But
yeah, it's, we'll see what happens, man. Like I said, like I'm praying for the best. Like I want to believe that we're on a good way. This whole thing was like, this is no bullshit. Like my wife has been begging me to move west since I met her. And when I lost my job, she was like, what a great opportunity to look for jobs out west. And a big part of that is she wanted to get out of the city really bad. And so like, we lived in Grand Rapids, which I think has about a greater Grand Rapids area population, like 1 million people, I think. So then we moved to a town in Montana of like 8,000 people. That was like next to a larger town of like 100,000, maybe. And then big college town for out here, at least. Mm-hmm. And then we moved, we wanted to get even further away. She got a job like 2 hours from where we lived. So we bought a place between our two jobs. So I live in a town of like 1,000 people now. We moved in on January 14th. And then again, no bullshit. Like we had been following this thing since December, early January on the news, because we read the news a ton. And it's just crazy. My wife was paranoid, for lack of a better term, to get the fuck out of cities before something fucked up happens. And we moved in like on January 14th. And when did the senators have their briefing? Like January 24th, right before a couple of them dumped their stocks. Unknowingly, apparently.
Assholes.
Right? So it's kind of like we're like patting ourselves on the back at this point. Like, we did it. We got the fuck out of the big cities, right? But now the opposites happen. We're like, Montana, love you, Governor Bullock, for shutting down so early on, getting criticized for it. It's kept our numbers super low. I think Montana has less than like 500 cases, right?
Wow. Well,
now
that have been tested.
Now what? Now we're the fucking guinea pig for opening back up. Like, because like it's going to take a state to open up and revert and regress to have everyone realize, oh, fuck, this isn't working. And so, like, that's us now. You're welcome. You're welcome.
I was comfortable with the idea of it being Georgia. I was like, you know what? Fine. But yeah, we're in the same boat, actually, man. We opened our state the 27th. So just a few days ago, our state reopened. We're not going to participate in that. We're going to still stay home because we're able to do it, luckily enough. But I know that Denver's mayor extended the stay at home till May 8th. But yeah, we're right there's like a wave of states. I think right now more than half the states are working or are reopen on some level, which is such a dangerous thing. I was just thinking it would be like the South, to be honest. And I was really hopeful that it would just be the South. But here we are.
Yeah, no, it's a horrifying thing, man. I honestly, I would like, if I could be like in the shoes of like a well-educated foreigner anywhere, I would just love to like know, like, what do they think? Like, what the fuck are those Americans doing? They're just like so willing to fuck this up as best as possible and have as many people die. It's America first in COVID-19 deaths.
I think the rest of the world expects that from us, no?
By this point, I guess so. Maybe. Maybe. Yeah, we'll see, man. I hope hopefully it works out. I mean, and honestly, like, if I have to come and stay at home again, like in a month from now, because then it'll be June in Montana. I won't be complaining about that. April's been nice. June will be better.
Dude. Well, just be safe, man. When you go back to work, wear a mask, have some hand sanitizer, stay the fuck away from people. And when you guys come home, grab a shower, get those clothes right in the laundry. Don't shake them out, so you're not bringing it home. Kick your shoes off. There's things you can do to really protect yourself. And hopefully you guys will do that. So
it's the fam that needs the protecting too. So
for sure, dude.
When you try to make beer clean, it's like you do everything you can, or you're not doing enough. And so, like, this situation feels the same. Like, that we should be doing everything we can to stop this, or we're not doing enough. But we're not doing everything we can. Not even fucking close. Not even fucking close.
Open for business, very limited systems in place, and you're on your own as the American worker. Good luck. Dude, thank you for taking
I'll be there with bells on.
I know you will.
15 minutes early. And I'm clocking out for lunch.
Dude, thanks for taking the time to do this, and let's circle back again soon, and you and I will be in touch. I'll ship you up some Two Hearted.
Thanks, man. I love that.
Cool.
All right, dude. Love you, brother.
Love you too, Brian.
Bye.
The first song you heard on this episode was Diatribe by Garrett Sayers Trio. We leave you with another one of their tracks titled Go Hard. Thank you for listening to Galaxy Tenants. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, like, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts.